Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by learning to develop yourself, your skills, your network, and more. I'm Brian, your host. Have you ever heard this quote, "We are mere bundles of habits," or "What are we more than a collection of habits?" This is totally true. We all think we're super unique or we're very special, me included, but really what we boil down to are the habits that we do on a daily basis. It's the reason why we're good parents or bad parents. It's the reason why we're healthy or unhealthy, why we're successful or not successful. And I've been on either side of the habit spectrum. I picked up some terrible habits throughout my teens and 20s that I had to unlearn. Drugs, drinking, laziness, bad eating habits, awful stuff. Things that were going to get me nowhere besides jail or death. And I nearly came to both of those conclusions at a certain point. Now, since then, I've lost 50 pounds. I learned how to code. I stopped drinking, started exercising, picked up a daily reading habit, journal. These weren't just things that I'd been doing forever. I picked these habits up later in life. Some of these habits I picked up in the last few years. And what I want to explain to you is how to create habits that can transform your life as a coder or just as a person. So whether you're looking to improve your coding skills, advance your career, or just make positive changes that actually stick, I want to give you a framework and some practical advice on doing that. Because too often when we talk about changing careers or learning to code, I talk about specifically, I'm guilty of this as well, is telling you, here's how you code, right? Here's the things you should do. And I realized that most people just aren't going to do these things because they don't have the habits or the discipline to make the positive changes that are actually going to stick. And building habits isn't about discipline or willpower. Those things don't last, right? It's about understanding a little bit of the science behind this behavior and changing it so you can apply it to your everyday life. Now, a lot of this stuff I learned through trial and error. Since then, I've read some really good books. A couple of them that I would recommend to you are The Power of Habit and Atomic Habits. These two books made a very deep impression on me, and I think that there's a lot of great nuggets and wisdom you can get out of these books. So if you get nothing else from this podcast, maybe just read those two books. So if you want outcomes like becoming a better coder, landing more job opportunities, helping you build wealth through better habits. Hey, I hope you're enjoying this episode. And if you're interested in becoming a software developer, learning how to build complex software, and actually get hired, join me at Parsity.io. If you're serious about joining, just schedule a call with me by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thanks, and back to the episode. When you actually take control of your habits and you realize how to influence them, you feel a lot more productive. You're going to feel more in control of your own life. Now, unfortunately, most people struggle to build lasting habits. It's the reason why people wait till January 1st to join Parsity or to start eating right. And then they start off strong and they eventually just fall back into their old patterns. It's not because they lack desire or effort. It's usually a misunderstanding of how habits are formed and maintained. Here's why most people struggle to build a coding habit, for example. They try to make the changes too quickly or too drastically. Big changes feel overwhelming, they lead to burnout, and then we just return to our old habits because they're easier. We feel like this is not in line with how I want to live, right? I said I was going to code for 4 hours every single day, and I'm going to wake up and do it. You do that for a week, and you're like, oh my God, I don't want to keep doing this. There's no way I can keep doing this. So you go in this all or nothing mindset, and then you just leave. You're like, nah, I'm not doing that. Let me go back to watching Netflix. That was a lot more chill than this. So there's a few reasons why people stop building habits or just return back to their old ways. And there's 4 of them that I want to explore real quick. Lack of immediate rewards. So beneficial habits like coding, they don't give you immediate gratification. Landing a job or mastering a new language or working out or eating right, the gratification is delayed. It's harder to stay motivated. And according to research, the human brain is wired to seek instant gratification, which is why sticking to long-term goals is really challenging. There's a chemical dopamine, which is like a reward chemical. This is often triggered from like drug use or alcohol and things like that. I know a lot about this one. This plays a crucial role in that process. And if the habit doesn't trigger this immediate dopamine release, It feels less rewarding and harder to maintain. Another reason, unrealistic expectations. We often expect dramatic results really soon. And if that expectation isn't met, you get discouraged, you give up on coding or eating right or exercising or whatever, right? If you're setting unrealistic goals, it increases the likelihood that you're not going to do this. But the opposite is also true. If you set realistic, attainable goals, then you increase the likelihood of long-term success. So having the expectation of going to the gym for a week and then looking in the mirror and finding any difference, bad expectation, right? Writing code for months, even for 3 months, and expecting you can get a job within 3 months of writing code, not a great expectation, right? At Parsity, our program lasts 6 months. We see that it often takes another 6 months for somebody to get hired at the long end of the spectrum. That's a full year commitment. Now, is 1 year of your life worth another decades of the increased salary trajectory and all the benefits of becoming a software developer? I would hope so. If it took 2 years, would it be? If it took 4 years, would it be? I think people want changes too fast. Now, I'm not saying you should be at Parsity for 4 years. No, of course not. Now, 1 year, I think, is a reasonable expectation. And it also sets you up so you're not disappointed if you don't get the job in 90 days, which I know a lot of boot camps are trying to sell you on. Last two reasons people fail to make these changes are trying to change way too much at once. So if you're taking on too many changes, it can feel overwhelming. This leads to failure because it's hard to focus and manage multiple new behaviors. So if you're learning a new programming language and trying to also learn algorithms, and you're also trying to, go on the job hunt at the same time, you're probably going to fail at all three of these things at once. And if you focused on the one habit, it's going to be a much more effective use of your time than trying to change multiple behaviors simultaneously. I kind of feel two ways about this because maybe if you know or listened to this podcast before, I picked up the habit of exercise along with coding, and those actually built on top of each other. The exercise helped give me that dopamine rush that I was craving after stopping doing, negative, bad stuff that I was putting in my body. And it also helped me understand delayed gratification. I've spoken about that on the podcast before. So I don't know if I fully agree with that one, but I do know that for most of us, me included, taking on too many things at once just leads to you doing many things poorly. The last reason, self-talk. I don't want to get too fluffy, but I got to get a little fluffy, right? When you failed in the past, you fall into some cycle of negative self-talk. You say, I already failed at that thing in the past. If you're an adult, you might not have a lot to look back on that you can say, I did something that was positive that I can look back on that shows me proof, evidence that I can now do this other thing. If you don't have that in recent experience, or you just maybe grew up in a negative household or whatever reason, there's a voice in your head. You think it's the voice of your conscience. And really, it's just this little monkey chattering in your head, right? And it's telling you all these things about yourself, why you can't do this and why you can't do that. You're just going to fail, just like your dad told you, or whatever this terrible voice is in your head. This can sabotage your efforts before you even begin. I'm fully invested and believe in the power of positive self-talk. I had to relearn this because I did not have great self-talk. I had the kind of talk that told me, things are going too well, Brian. They're going too well. Something bad's going to happen. Something negative's going to happen. You better be prepared. You better be prepared. Does that sound like you at all? Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just a really neurotic person, but I don't think so. I think a lot of us think like this. They think things are going too well. What's going to happen next? How am I going to fail? Oh, I knew you couldn't do this. These people are way smarter than you. You're just faking it. You're going to get exposed. These are the kind of things that would infiltrate my brain, and I had to learn to quiet them down, or at least to recognize this was just fear talking. This wasn't truly me talking. Now, don't worry. We've gone over all these reasons why you're going to fail, but I didn't make this podcast to tell you why you're going to fail. I made it to tell you how to overcome this stuff so you can actually build the coding habit, build whatever habit you want, transform your life, and hopefully take a step towards incremental progress in your life. Let's get to it. Step one, start small, be consistent. When I got sober and started improving other aspects of my life, I didn't really try to change everything at once. My first goal was, start by not drinking. That was goal number one, right? Drinking led to me doing other bad things. And I realized that was the catalyst. It was the trigger to doing all sorts of terrible things. So I said, goal one, don't drink for a day, which was really difficult because I had been drinking for over a decade daily, never took more than 3 days off, I think max. Yeah, over 10 or 11 years or something like that. And so I said, I'm going to stop drinking today. I got rid of all the stuff in the house and I'm like, I'm just going to not drink. That was not simple, by the way. And when people ask me, how long? I said, I don't know. I would never make a big commitment. I would never say, I'm never drinking again. I would just say, I'm just not doing it today. And I would just try to stack as many days as I can. Now I'm on day, whatever 11 years times 365 is, I'm on that day. So someone help me do the math out there. I don't know. But the key was, of course, consistency. It's better to take a small step consistently than make large leaps that you can't maintain. So this small step was just not doing this thing. And I just said, every day I'm going to not do this thing. That was a bunch of small steps that added up to a very large step. Or when I decided to lose weight, I didn't overhaul my diet overnight. I didn't go like, I'm going to never eat junk food or I'm never going to do this. I used to eat Jack in the Box like every day, which is one of the most embarrassing things I admit, right? I'm actually more embarrassed by that sometimes than the drugs and all the other stuff I did. So I made a couple small changes. I'm like, I'm going to just track my calories, one, and I'm going to cut out sugary drinks. I'm going to stop drinking like soda. I'm going to start switching it up with diet and Coke Zero. That was it. And eventually I tracked my calories. I saw incremental changes and I thought, okay, this actually kind of works. Let me just apply more small changes. Maybe I'll cut out a piece of this meal here. Maybe I'll substitute one of these meals for something else. The same thing can apply to coding. Start with small daily commitments, like coding for 10, 20, 30 minutes a day and build from there. Research shows that consistency, small incremental changes leads to sustainable habits. There's a concept of habit stacking where you build new habits on top of existing ones. This is also supported by behavioral science as an effective strategy. Basically, you take a small habit, you take another small habit, and over time you build these up. And over time is the key. You don't do this all at once. You build them up, and this is how you build yourself into a completely different person. Step 2, make the habits easy to follow. Can't stress this one enough. Make them easy. If it is a hard thing to do, you're not going to do it. When people start going to the gym and they say, I'm going to go to the gym for 2 hours, and they haven't been to the gym for the whole year, I'm like, that's not going to work. I already know they're going to fail. Like, there's zero way you're going to make that work. How is that going to be easy to do? You've set yourself up for so much failure at that point and disappointment. You haven't gone to the gym ever, and now you're going to go for 2 hours. Same thing with coding. I haven't coded at all, but I'm going to spend 3 hours every single day until I get hired. No way. I don't believe you can do that. I can't do that. I love coding, and I could not just after work spend 3 full hours a day, every day coding for, infinity. Or even for a year. That would be really, really tough for me, at least. One of the most effective strategies that I used when building up my new habits was making them easy to follow. When I wanted to start writing regularly, because I realized my brain was just on fire. I was dealing with so much stress when I got my first developer job, all this negative self-talk, and just generally feeling like I was going to fail. And I was like overwhelmed with these negative thoughts. And so I'm like, I have to write this out. I knew that writing was going to be a way for me to get my thoughts out on paper and also prove to myself, I'm like, I can't trust what my brain is saying. Like, I really felt like I was just in this weird space where it was nonstop chatter. And I'm like, is this true? Is this not true? Let me write this out and make sense of it. And the more I wrote, the more I felt at ease. And the way I made a habit to journal every single night was simply putting a notebook right next to my bed. Right now, if you go into my bedroom, which would be kind of creepy, please don't do that, actually. But if you were in my bedroom and you looked at my nightstand, you'd see a janky little notebook there, just like a 99-cent notebook you get from the store. And it is right next to my bed with a pen. And that way, when I go to sleep, I sit down and I see that notebook staring at me. And I'm like, I don't feel like writing. I don't go to sleep or I don't go into bed or get ready for bed and feel like writing. I feel like playing on my phone or doing whatever. But when I see it there, it's a reminder. It's like, oh, yeah, that's right. That's the thing I should be doing. If you're learning to code, this could mean setting up your workspace the night before or leaving your laptop open with the code editor ready to go. You could set a reminder on your phone. The easier you make it, the easier it will be to do and stick with it. There's a behavioral economist, Dr. Richard Thaler, and he coined this term nudge to describe how small environmental changes can significantly influence behavior. By making it easier to start, you effectively nudge yourself towards success. It's like this little reminder. You wake up in the morning, you see your laptop at the kitchen table or something like that, or wherever you're going to walk past it. You see the code editor already open. You've written down what you're going to do that day. Now it's a matter of, are you going to ignore it? You're way less likely to ignore it. If your laptop's closed, sitting in the corner somewhere, and you have zero clue what you're actually supposed to do that day, it's a lot easier to say, you know what? I'll think about it at work. I'll come back later and do it. Most people go wrong by setting up these unnecessary barriers to their habits. If the code editor isn't ready, or they got to spend time setting up their environment every day, you get distracted or you get discouraged. You want to reduce the friction between you and the new you. Reduce the friction between the thing that you want to do that you know you should be doing. You want to make it easier. Step 3, replace negative habits with positive ones. That's basically what I did to get sober, essentially. I didn't really just quit my addictive habits. I just replaced them. I was addicted to alcohol and other redacted. And then I replaced it with coding and exercise. And do I have an unhealthy addiction to those things? Probably. That's a whole other episode. I probably need to speak to a real mental health professional about these things, because I'm realizing now 11 years in, which is really late in the game, that some of these positive habits are also just addictions. Is that a bad thing, a good thing? I don't really know. I just know they're a lot more profitable than sitting around drinking and doing bad stuff all day. So one of the most effective strategies I used was replacing these habits. For you as a coder, this might mean replacing the time spent on distractions like social media or Netflix or sports or maybe drinking or doing whatever, and spending this time learning something new. The key is to find a positive activity that can take place of the negative one. This helps you avoid relapse and also allows you to build something constructive in its place. The National Institute on Drug Abuse even suggested that replacing negative habits with positive ones is a key strategy in addiction recovery. And you can apply this habit formation in other areas as well. Your brain as a human is wired for addiction. So a lot of the things I read about addicts or myself or about people suffering from drug abuse or other things like that can be applied to quote unquote like normal people out there that might not be suffering from debilitating drug use, but maybe suffering from something like screen addiction or food addiction or these other things that we want to replace in our lives that are just negative, but they don't get the same media attention. No one cares about the person scrolling their phone endlessly or watching Netflix for 12 hours on Saturday or overeating and binge eating all the time. We don't talk about those things as much. We see the drug addict, the alcoholic. I'm not like them. I'm not like them. All I do is watch Netflix for 14 hours and eat a bucket of fried chicken every day. Totally normal, right? So if we start looking at our own lives and thinking, what are some of the addictive habits we have and how have we manifested some of those addictions out there? And can we replace them with other healthier addictions? And yes, you can. There's proven science in this stuff. And that's something you should definitely think about and audit your own addictions, even as a quote unquote normie out there. If you are normal, I'm just making a bunch of assumptions about you. Maybe you're not normal at all. I don't know. Last step, track your progress and celebrate small wins. Tracking progress is crucial because it allows you to see how far you've come. You need some sort of document to prove to yourself. This also helps with that little negative voice in the back of your head telling you, oh, you can't do the thing. You're not going to be able to do the thing because you never did anything in your past. This awful voice you may have in your head. I hope it's not like that. I hope it's much better than that, maybe not so negative. But keeping this journal, this document, tracking your progress, really critical, because now you can tell that voice in your head, well, here's proof that I did the thing that I said I was going to do. Now what, brother, right? Now you have proof that you are going where you wanted to go. And doing this was really helpful for me. I still do this, and I suggest to people that I work with. When I was a manager, I suggested people on my team do this. I said, keep a journal, keep some sort of document that tells you and me what you've accomplished. When you're feeling down, look at it. When you want to get promoted, give it to me. When you want to talk about your yearly, review, give it to me and we can talk about that. It plays a really practical role, not only in your career, but for your own mental health. And celebrate the small wins. Little victories give you momentum to keep going and reinforce the positive changes you're making. We had a student at Parsity just get hired, and I had a couple other people in my circle get hired recently. And when people get their first job, I always ask them this. I said, how are you going to celebrate? And surprisingly, a lot of them say, oh, just gonna, do nothing. I'm just so excited, but I feel like so pressured. I gotta, start learning and practicing all this stuff. I said, hey, listen, the best advice I can give you is celebrate. You gotta celebrate. What's the point of it all if you're not celebrating these wins? If you worked really hard, went to a coding boot camp, or you learned how to code on your own, or you lost some weight at the gym, or you went through a day without drinking or something like that, that's worth celebrating in some way, celebrating with something small. Nowadays, I actually celebrate by going to the gym or going to eat ice cream or, eating a nice meal or whatever, watching a movie by myself. Find some way to reward yourself, because celebrating these small wins triggers the release of dopamine, and it reinforces the positive behavior and solidifies the habit. Your brain is not that complex, right? We are not that far removed from our Neanderthal ancestors. When you do the thing that you know you should be doing, give yourself a little boost. Give yourself that brain loop, that cycle, that nice reward and response cycle, saying, hey, you did the thing. Here's the reward. Your brain says, ooh, I got a little treat from doing that thing I know I'm supposed to do. Let me keep doing that thing. In conclusion, start small. Make the habits easy to follow. Replace negative habits. Track your progress. These are the building blocks for lasting change. When you have a group of habits, they can ladder up to something much greater. Purpose, health, success as a coder or otherwise, right? This show's not all about coding. Coding, I think, is an extension of building good habits. And if you want to be a software engineer or change careers or do both, right? If you're looking to change careers into becoming a software engineer or any other career, honestly, your habits will make or break you. This is not going to always be easy. I've gone through some of the darkest times with addiction, and I've come out on the other side. And if I'm being honest, it's something I still kind of struggle with. There's always that pull to go back to the old habits. But I can tell you this, if you do this, the rewards are worth it. So keep at it, stay consistent, and good luck out there. I hope this is helpful. And as always, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn or Instagram or wherever the heck you find me on social media. Anyway, see you around. That'll do it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. To learn more about becoming a software engineer with us, then check out parsity.io. If you're not quite ready for that, then jump into our dev30.xyz program, which is 30 days of working on your mindset, habits, and JavaScript skills. Totally worth it. See you next week.